Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very good afternoon to each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this first session of Center for Teaching and Learning at DHOFAR University for this academic year 2020-2021. And on behalf of the DU faculty and the team of CTL, I'd like to welcome our presenter, Miss Andrea Beniki, and I'll do the introduction in a few minutes. And I want to welcome the audience on YouTube and our audience also on Zoom. So welcome everybody. We're glad to have you. We're excited for this event. I'd like to also welcome Mr. Mustafa Al-Ajmi and Ms. Iman Al-Maskari from Salikoon for Knowledge Company, who will be helping us with the translation via Zoom. So we're glad to have everybody here. And before we go ahead and introduce Andrea, I'd like to draw everybody's attention that we will be taking everybody's question via YouTube public chat, as well as Zoom chat at the end of the presentation. So please prepare your questions. And I know Andrea is eager to have interaction with the audience. And we'll do that at the end of the presentation. Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome my great colleague and a good friend, Andrea Beniki. Andrea holds a master's degree in language teaching with a concentration in TESOL. She has worked as a teacher trainer and lead program administrator during her time as the assistant director of the University of Nebraska, the language intensive program at the University of Nebraska, Omaha in the US. Outside of her home country, Ms. Beniki has worked or studied in places around the world, most recently in Doha, Qatar. There she was a core member of a curriculum development team, which focused on redesigning English language courses to implement a task-based teaching methodology. She is currently working as an entrepreneur and the founder of the Confident English Speakers Organization. Andrea will be talking to us today about pedagogical principles and practices during COVID-19, preparing and delivering effective online classes. This interactive workshop will cover topics including learning design, teacher presence, student engagement, and assessment considerations. Andrea, the floor is yours. Welcome, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you so much for having me. A big thank you to DHOFAR University and Dr. Khalid Al-Mashayki for this opportunity. I so enjoy talking about course and curriculum design, and now more than ever, it's so important, right? So, Assalamu alaikum, thank you very much. And I would like to let you know that today's workshop is designed in the format that we will first cover big picture principles of course design, and then we'll talk about practices for how you can put those principles into action and what that really looks like. To keep in mind, these are suggestions for how to address the topics that have come up during COVID-19 and an opportunity to collaborate and receive some feedback and to have some dialogue. My goal for you is that you will think about the principles I'm sharing and ask some questions about how we can relate the principles and the practices from theory to reality in your own classes, okay? What I'm going to do in bringing up these emerging themes is really get you to think and consider them, but I want to point out that this is not a prescriptive session. Nobody knows your students better than you do, right? So the best that I can do is set you up to make the considerations that you can then apply for your own learning context. So we're going to start, and I'm going to get the slide going. A little bit about me, as Dr. Khalid has said, is that I have been in the profession of teaching and learning for 15 years. I've been an instructor in the classroom. I've been a program administrator and a teacher trainer. Some of the pictures that I chose to add in this slide are from my visit to Salalah back in 2014, when I was representing the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and we were looking to build and grow our relationship with the wonderful country of Oman and with the students at DHOFAR University. Something that I will ask you to do today is to, hopefully you're watching this on your desktop or on your laptop, and then have your phone handy so that when I'll show some QR codes that you can scan to participate in conversation. And of course, I will have the chat open. I do hope that we can have a little bit of interaction as we go, just so that I can kind of get some feedback on how we can apply this to your situation. Okay, so for our agenda today, what we'll do is we need to start by acknowledging the current pedagogical context in higher education. Then we'll delve into 4 principles as mentioned, starting with the foundation of all course design, which is having written effective course objectives and student learning outcomes. We'll talk about how to develop your teacher presence in the online classroom, how to increase student engagement as much as we can. And the last part that we'll get into is some assessment considerations for your course design for online courses. I know that that's something that everybody's probably pretty concerned about these days. And finally, I do want to address alleviating teacher burnout, because I am sure that everybody is feeling this current pandemic that we're in, right? So we'll talk about ways to kind of try to reduce the burnout that we feel from doing all of these things, and wrap it up with some final thoughts. So with that, if you could please, and you can, I'm watching on the Zoom chat, and I will also look at this. Just scan the QR code and give us 3 adjectives or 3 words that really describe teaching during COVID-19 for you. And we'll take a look as we go. This will help me to really kind of see and get to know what it is that my friends at DHOFAR University are dealing with.
Andrea, I'll be, if possible, I'll be also reading some comments from YouTube chat.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments to share?
Not yet. So could you please ask the question again? Yeah.
So the question that I'm asking is, how would you describe teaching during COVID-19? If you can give me 3 words to describe teaching in this current pandemic, how would you describe it?
The first two words that we have, 3 actually: challenging, exciting, new.
Nice. Good.
Demanding, less interactive, difficult.
Yeah. And I want to see on my end.
Stressful, new learning, and demanding.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. For those of you doing the QR code, I had to click a button. Always, right? Okay, so it's stressful, it's demanding, it's new. I'm happy to hear positive attributions of it being exciting, because it's an interesting time in history. And so we're all learning as we go here, right?
We're hearing challenging a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stressful,
and it's
challenging.
Good.
Opportunity, learning, new experience, okay. Accountable, challenging. Okay, interesting, useful.
Yeah. And there's something to be said for acknowledging how we feel, right? Because as teachers, we often take that responsibility to really power through and get things done. And sometimes we forget to stop and just really acknowledge the work that we're doing. And it's not easy, right? So if we think about the pedagogical context for this year, when 2020 began, We were in the classroom, face-to-face teaching, working with our students in person. In that situation, you know, we're able to read the cues from our students and respond in real time. We're able to provide examples as needed and connect with them in person. Then all of a sudden came this global pandemic about March, and we were all pushed into this emergency remote teaching. And I really think that this is a valuable phrase for expressing what we are experiencing, because it is an emergency. We had to go from in the classroom and doing what we've done and known for so long to having a completely new method of delivery and style of engagement. And so in the emergency testing, we're looking at a situation where it's different from regular online instruction. And I really want to emphasize this, right? Because we didn't have time for planning our courses or developing the ideas. We're now moving everything with maybe limited support systems for how things work, for the technological aspect of it. And not everybody's comfortable teaching and learning online to start with, right? And thinking about not having that time and maybe not having enough of the resources. It's like panic. What do? We're all just trying to survive, right? We're worried about our own health, the health of our family and friends, of our colleagues and our students. And considering that for our students too, right? Because they have their own concerns and their own tragedies and their own situational emergencies that were really shocking. And we're still processing this, right? But now I think it's safe to say that moving from the emergency phase, now, okay, the shock is subsiding somewhat, and we're able to say, okay, now let's really take some time to prepare. Let's plan effective teaching and learning for the context that we're in. And let's plan out with the support systems. Let's provide some more personalization. But something that I would like you all to give yourself credit for too is now we're not only just subject matter experts in whatever it is that you're teaching, if it's in chemistry or history or biology or math, but now we also need to find a way to be experts with the online technology. And so this is where I'm coming in today, from this aspect of really wanting to bring you, encourage you, remind you that this has been an emergency situation this year. And now we can slow down and we can take some time to reflect and say, okay, now that this shock is wearing off, what are the approaches that we're using, and are they effective? Two, in a lot of the literature that's out there and what's coming out with this emergency remote teaching approaches has found that people were gravitating towards one of two approaches. And I'm curious to see what you think. Because on one hand, we had a tools-based approach, which for me, this was the way that I kind of shifted and gravitated for. Okay, now we're online. What tools can I use to help me teach? So these can be the video conferencing tools or the text-based discussion forums or boards for posting, or I don't know if you're doing the Remind apps for texting with students, but looking for what can I use as a tool to effectively teach my students. And the challenge with that is that we're not trained, most of us. I'm sure there are plenty of people here who do have training in online course delivery, but for those of us that don't, we don't have the knowledge, what we call the pedagogical content knowledge, about how to apply these tools most effectively. On the other hand, some of my colleagues I know were going for a more materials-based approach. And in this one, what is happening is that people are using the materials that we had already designed for the face-to-face classroom and just saying, okay, I have my materials. I know what I was going to teach. This is already prepared. Now just let me put it online and deliver it here. And the challenge with having this materials-based approach is that now we're lacking the attention needed to the context of being online, because those materials weren't necessarily designed for that purpose. So I would like to know briefly, for those of you participating, please let me know, which approach did you find yourself taking or leaning towards when we were in this emergency remote teaching phase? Were you doing the tools-based approach? Were you taking more of the materials-based, or were you doing a blend of both? And Dr. Khalid, if you could let me know if anybody's typing in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go.
Okay, Dr. Renina, both are blended, a blend of both. Yeah, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, roughly, materials-based approach. Okay, so 5 or 6 people on YouTube are saying both.
Okay.
A hybrid approach, including bits and pieces from all, a blend of both.
Yeah.
And one answer is I moved from material-based to tool-based, experimenting the different tools, positive outcome so far.
Mm-hmm. And these are things that we do intuitively as teachers, maybe without necessarily realizing what we're doing. And so this is our opportunity to really pay more attention now and reflect and say, okay, what choices did I make? And how can I build on that, right? I'm trying to see my votes here are coming in. Okay. So now that we have some language with which to use as we talk about these teaching approaches, let's carry on in consideration and recognizing using the tools or the materials, what is working. And I really like this because I think that many of us can probably identify, like, I am 100% certain of what it is that I am supposed to do, but I'm 0% sure of what I'm going to do, because we're just, kind of cobbling and getting by with it. And so this is why what we're doing today is we're taking some time to really reflect, calm our nerves from the emergency teaching situation and say, okay, what is it that I can do to really improve upon what I was doing when I was in the emergency state? Okay. So with that being said, now we're in the context, we know where we are, we have some time to reflect, think, and apply. Let's talk about these core principles of effective online course design and delivery. And once again, this is not a completely comprehensive list. There are many other things that we can talk about, but these are the biggest principles, the most important foundations to apply. And to analyze the role of technology as we're using it today. Because with the past in our face-to-face classrooms, we were able to use technology more as a supporting role, a supporting tool. And now we've got technology as the medium through which everything is being delivered, the teaching and the learning happen, okay? My goal is not to give you all of these nice tips and tricks that fit really neatly into a box, but instead to really ask you to reflect and consider on what you're doing in your courses and how we can improve it. Okay, so the first principle that I would like to talk about today is maintaining effective course objectives and student learning outcomes. And for those of you who maybe hadn't thought about this for a while, when we're talking about course objectives, we're talking about what the course will teach And when we're talking about student learning outcomes, we're talking about what students will be able to do as a result of learning. Okay, so the objectives are what we will teach. The outcomes are what we will look for students to do to demonstrate learning. And oftentimes SLOs are written in the form of can-do statements. So I would like you, please, choose one class to concentrate on for this workshop. I recommend that you choose one with which you're most familiar or one that you've been teaching the longest. And that way it will allow you to spend less energy recalling the course details and more energy reflecting and asking yourself questions throughout this workshop. Okay? And whatever course it is that you're choosing to reflect upon, I would like to know, to what degree do the current course objectives and SLOs account for remote teaching and learning? If you have your syllabus handy, you can even just take a look at your objectives and the student learning outcomes, what we're asking the students to do. Are they accounting for this new context that we're in? And if you could just type that in the comments, I would love to hear whether or not you feel that the current objectives and SLOs that you're using account for the online teaching and learning space. And Dr. Khalid, are we getting anything on YouTube?
Not yet. I'm just waiting here.
And it will take a minute to really think of, this might be a question probably that, we haven't given consideration to yet, because I'm assuming most people are probably using SLOs and objectives that were written pre-pandemic.
Okay, the first response was 80%. And the next one is, in one of the courses that I have long experience in, the students achieved over 85%.
Mm-hmm.
The
So,
third one is a varying degree.
Yeah. Maybe I can clarify this a little bit better by reiterating that I'm not asking for how much of the objective students are attaining. What I'm asking is to come at this from the perspective of reflecting on the course design as it is and saying, okay, has this been designed, or are the current objectives and learning outcomes flexible enough that we can use them still in the online space, whether or not if they were originally designed for face-to-face assessment? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does, yeah.
If technology has been incorporated into the objectives and the outcomes before, that would be wonderful. And I would love to even hear just a couple of comments about the role that technology plays in your SLOs. And for those that are saying, students achieved 85% of their objectives, which is wonderful. How are we assessing those objectives? Are we assessing them using Moodle, I believe everybody's on? Are we using technology to assess it? Or are we still using the materials that we had before and assessing with the materials from pre-pandemic?
Okay, one comment that we got is, although the CLOs that I have are not contextualized specifically to online teaching, still they are generic enough that they can be embedded as is. However, in my opinion, tweaking is needed here and there to make it more applicable in the given scenario.
Thank you. For whoever wrote that comment, thank you very much, because
Dr.
it's
Omar Farouk,
insightful.
Dr. Irina, they were designed for face-to-face, but we have to adjust them for online learning. We are still, okay, trying to suit Moodle, I think is here. All right.
And this is something that it can be a bit scary to talk about. Having designed programs from the ground up, we, for example, at the language course in the University of Nebraska in Omaha, we started with a completely blank slate and designed our entire curriculum in anew in 2014 it would have been. And it's a big project to write effective objectives and SLOs. And I'm not recommending that you start all over again. No. What I'm recommending is that you reflect on what you have. And as was commented, if they are flexible enough and you can apply them, great. But maybe they do need some small adjustments to account for the current context that we're in. Okay, so moving on. When we're talking about these course objectives and student learning outcomes, let's evaluate the existing framework that we have. Take what we already have done and say, okay, what do we have here that still works, that still applies? And what do we need to reassess for the role of technology? What can we do to introduce some more flexibility and to incorporate a variety of mediums? Because with student learning outcomes, we're looking for students to demonstrate that they have learned something. And we'll get into assessment later in this presentation. But as my goal is to have you think and ask some questions, where I would like you to start really is with your existing objectives and outcomes. Are they flexible enough? Do you need to revise them? What can be done? And those are conversations that you can have. In summary, the big takeaway that I want you to keep in mind when you're designing effective online courses is that the course design focus should be more on the learning aspect than it is on teaching. And that's something that as teachers, we can get really carried away with what we're trying to do and how we're delivering it and how effective our delivery is. But if we design the courses well and we focus on the learning aspect, then it's going to be more likely to assure that we're doing a good job. Okay, that being said, let's go ahead and move on to our second principle that I'd like to cover today, which is talking about online teaching presence. And so when we talk about teaching presence, we're talking about how we show up, how we are being present for our students, right? And so I would like to know, before we delve into the specifics, what practices have you previously implemented to grow your online teaching presence? What are you doing now? If you could type it in the Zoom chat, I have access to that. The YouTube chat, I'll need some help from Dr. Al-Mashayki. Think about things like building teacher rapport, getting to know your students, you're being present for them. What are things that you're doing now or that you have already tried to really grow that online presence? Okay, and I'm not seeing much in the Zoom chat.
The Zoom chat is exclusive for Arabic speakers, so they are in a separate room.
Okay.
One here is upload study materials, offline recorded videos.
Are they recorded lessons, pre-recorded lessons?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to know what percentage of the lessons are being delivered as pre-recorded. Are we filming ahead of time and getting them all, knocking them all out and putting them up on Moodle, or are we kind of doing it as we go? What else are people trying?
Okay. Uploading teaching materials and assignments to, okay. Using more differentiated learning to engage students.
Mm-hmm.
Recorded videos and messages. I think they're talking about online live chat here. Pre-recorded lessons, preparation of relevant resource materials. Depends on the course. Some courses, all sessions are recorded previously or ahead of time. The recorded sessions are uploaded before the session is taken. Recorded videos, supporting materials.
So it sounds like we're still, we're associating teaching presence with materials.
Mm-hmm.
What about if we can reframe the word choice a bit? What about if we said connection? How are we connecting with students? How are we building that relationship? I will continue on. I hope that we're thinking about it. Let's contribute some comments and kind of see what we can come up with. And so with this principle of conveying an online teaching presence, we're going to talk first about the theory part of it, and then we're going to look at the practical application, okay? So just briefly, when we talk about teaching presence, we're talking about three types, really. We've got the cognitive presence, social, and facilitatory. What does that mean? When we're showing up with a cognitive, focusing on the cognitive presence, think about students' preparedness to learn, okay? Cognitive presence is checking in with our students to see, are they prepared to work? Are they managing the cognitive workload of an online course? When we're talking about the social presence, this is things like providing a social communication channel to maintain or enhance communication. And this can be student to student as well as student to teacher, right? Don't forget that learning is a social process. And so part of developing the online teaching presence, in addition to checking in with our students and seeing if they're cognitively prepared, is to facilitate some social engagement, enable them to communicate with each other, with you, building some group cohesion, looking at their effective expression, much like when we started this workshop and I asked you to give me 3 words to describe teaching during COVID-19. That is my way of checking in with you all to see how your effective expression is. Where are you at in this? And at the same way, we have to do that with our students too, because if nothing else, we need them to know that they're being heard, right? And that we're listening and that we care. And the third type of presence, the facilitatory, we're talking about facilitating discourse, providing direct instructions, doing the mentoring. And so when you're thinking about this, let's break it down into 2 parts with the semester, because we can start building our teaching presence before classes even begin. And yes, many people commented about uploading materials ahead of time, and that is true. Being really well organized gives students a sense of calmness, that it's okay, my instructor isn't just grabbing and dashing and pulling and trying to get everything out as it comes up. But also making sure that we're setting clear assignments for engagement and clear expectations for the assignments, for engagement, and for communication. So if you're somebody who is using discussion forums, let's say you want students to come online and write some comments, what are you expecting? Not only in numbers, for example, maybe you say, I want you to comment twice a week in our discussion forum about the topic at hand, but also what does a quality contribution look like? Show lots of examples, show them what you might use even for not necessarily a rubric, but former work that students have done that is something that you think, hey, this really shows that they're digging in, they're ready. Something else I want to add too is when you're uploading these things, we want to try to, again, part of building our online presence before classes begin. If you can eliminate in one lesson how much a student has to jump around, if we can keep everything in one location, that's their home base, because maybe you're using these different mediums and we've got them going to a video and then reading this article and then coming back to post a comment. How can we reduce the number of times that students have to jump between windows, between browsers, between programs in order to make it more seamless? Okay. And maybe I'd be curious to know if anybody's done this. The comments haven't shared it yet, but is anybody creating a welcome video? Are you filming yourself, maybe welcoming students into the classroom, letting them become familiar and get to know about you and about the course, trying to ease some anxiety that comes with taking online courses, and presenting yourself in a way that's both accessible and approachable? Because unfortunately, when we're in this online space, it's easy to reduce teachers and students to a name on a page, right? We don't get to spend that time in the classroom with them anymore, building the relationship. So before the class even begins, what you can do is put up a welcome video, set the standard, set the stage for continued positive interactions between you and the students. And then when we get into the semester, how do we maintain that throughout? So of course, I'm sure many of you are sending some weekly emails, I hope, with updates about what's expected for the week, what students should be doing, how much time they should be dedicating to the different aspects of the course. With facilitating Discord, this is also, it's more than just simply requiring the students to post a discussion, comment, and reply to others. What we want to do is ourselves make sure that we're reading and providing feedback on students' postings in a timely manner. Let them know that you are present, you see what they're doing, you have some feedback for them. Encourage their participation. If you can identify and draw out areas of agreement or disagreement relating to the content of the course. Facilitating discourse also is pointing out linkages between, and this is something that we do a lot with teaching, it's the connection with the content to the greater world, the content to other content, and the content to yourself, right? Real world applications. And helping the students really articulate their shared understandings of the content. When we talk about direct instruction, this is also something with maintaining the teaching presence throughout the semester. So having the pre-developed presentations are wonderful. Assessing the students' work, timely feedback, diagnosing any misconceptions. And this is something that's harder to do when we're not in real time. Clarifying the concepts and making sure that we can refer students to additional practice resources if they need it. So really bringing in our teaching presence, it starts before the semester begins and it carries on throughout. And so I would like to know, when we started this and a lot of the teacher presence was about uploading materials and having it designed early. Before we get into the next point, I want to know, given this additional information about teacher presence, what could you do in which areas of building your teacher presence can you choose to work on and to focus more? And how can you do that? So to clarify my question, I would like people to type into the chat and let us know given all of this information about building your online teacher presence, what can you do? How can you apply this moving forward? And this is something that I hope you're doing in your classrooms too, is waiting and giving students time and giving people time to really reflect, think, ask, and answer. Okay, so we'll keep on going. It's the only trouble here is we have a little bit of disconnect between the YouTube live stream and with Zoom. So the third principle that I would like to cover today is talking about student engagement. Okay, and I'm sure people that I have spoken with, one of the most troublesome aspects of teaching online is getting our students to really engage. So I would like to know, based on your experience, what has worked best to increase student engagement in your courses? You are the experts, you are in the classroom virtually. Tell me, what has worked best so far for you to facilitate increased engagement?
One answer that we got here is asking questions frequently or continuously.
Mm-hmm. And I would be curious to know too, what approach we're taking to question asking. Are we doing a Socrative approach? Are we ensuring that we're asking open-ended questions that necessitate students to develop and go farther than take their thinking to the next step?
Another answer is personalizing the content with some examples relevant to their daily lives.
Nice.
Interactions, making them talk on small topics, practice problems, maintaining engagement, which is most challenging aspect of virtual teaching, calling students by their names.
Yes, good.
And relate tasks to their own experiences. Asking questions about what we're doing, open-ended questions, trying to end each class by a short intro to the coming one in a way that makes them look forward to it, asking to share examples, more online presence, questions and answers, okay. Simultaneous active interactive chatting about the lesson tasks and activities. Involve students in discussions so that it should be two-way traffic. Discussion on the topic, maintaining the interesting discourse. Okay.
And I'd be curious to also know the platforms that we're using for the question asking. Are we doing it inside of Moodle? Are we doing it in the learning management system?
We are doing it via Moodle, yes. And all of those,
and are we,
all of the other platforms are integrated in Moodle.
Okay. Is it basically in writing? Reading and writing? Are we doing it in any speaking opportunities?
Another one is give them some breaks during online sessions.
Yeah. Probably like right now, right? Yeah, we're not robots, right? People, yes. We're human beings. And so
another one here is Kahoot, Moodle.
Nice. Kahoot's fun. That's a good one. And it's the gamification, right? So just talking about facilitating student engagement, again, we're talking about the principle of increasing engagement, making sure that we have it and putting it into practice. And no conversation about student engagement would be complete without talking about motivation and tapping to motivation. And I'm so happy to hear that teachers are making an effort to call their students by name, right? I heard it said once that the most beautiful sound in the world is your own name. And that is really something that will resonate with your students and say, hey, you know what? The professor's paying attention to me. She knows me by name. I had better show up and be there, because otherwise, you know, she's watching. Employing a variety of mediums, as I mentioned. So for the different learning types that we try to accommodate in the classroom, now we're also still trying to do that online, right? So for example, for me, I'm super visual. I need to see things. I can remember colors and shapes, but if I just listen, I will fall asleep. And so with the pre-recorded lessons that we're doing, are we recording them in the same place and the same delivery method all the time? Are we moving it around a little bit, changing the background, using different a style of delivery? Are we giving students things to not only watch, read, write, listen? The conversation is great. Having the expectations for the community, as we mentioned earlier, letting students know that, hey, I'm looking for a really well-developed answer. And students who are motivated to do well in the class are going to put in that extra engagement and effort to really flesh it out. Another topic that is coming up a lot with teachers at this current time is about having the synchronous and asynchronous assignments. And so when we talk about synchronous activities, these are things that all of the students are doing together as a class at the same time. Okay, the communication is in real time. It can possibly be a little more effective and engaging because everybody's there together. And this also can allow for some instant feedback in real time as students and issues are coming up. So things like doing the video conferencing, the live chat, live stream videos. What we're doing right now is a synchronous activity, but also considering about having some asynchronous ones too, because these are activities where students don't need to do it at the same time. They can do it independently. They can do it at their own pace. The communication wouldn't be live, but it's probably more convenient and flexible. And it allows students to really work at their own pace. So these are things like having the students write the blog post or doing the comments, taking screenshots, having videos. So my advice for you for facilitating this engagement is really to have a variety of activities that you're all doing together in sync, and having some other ones that students can have some more control over. When we get into assessment, we're going to talk about the self-paced promotion of assessment during this time. Also, I would like to know, are we taking time to reach out to students who seem to be at risk? If you know that somebody has not logged in to the class for a long time, or they're just barely contributing anything, check in with them, send them an email, say, hey, call them by name. I see you. I notice you haven't been around. What's going on? And what this can do is it can give you the opportunity to encourage them, to help them feel a little bit more comfortable. Even better, pick up the phone and call. This is something that might be a positive out of the pandemic because we're so confined in our own spaces, our homes, that we're not seeing people, we're not talking to people. When is the last time we had a phone call with a stranger, right? Or with a student or with a colleague? And particularly those that are falling behind, that we see they're falling off the grid. Are you reaching out? Are you making the effort? Are you showing them, hey, I see you? And also sharing, sometimes students, when they start to fall behind, it might not be a lack of motivation. It might not be a lack of desire. It can be because there are some time management issues. Or, you know, now we're not often there from start to finish and monitoring everything. Students are having to do this on their own. And they're mostly young adults. And this is still something that they're developing in their cognitive growth, right? There might be some misunderstandings or some inability to comprehend some of the course content. Give them a call and ask and just see how they're doing. And then also the last part of advice is, you know, share the real you. And I don't mean taking selfies and posting them online. That's not what I mean, but I like the picture. but let them get to know you a little bit. What is the music that you're listening to? What are the movies that you're watching? What are some small things, maybe a hobby that you participate, that doing this, yes, this is our job. We're not here for personal means, but at the same time, we're all humans, right? And we want to get away from just the name on the screen and the words on the screen and the videos, but bring some of that personal aspect into it. Because when students can identify and relate to you, then they're going to be much more likely to engage. So in practice, these are some things that you can do within your own courses. And the fourth topic that I wanted to get into today a little bit is assessment. Again, you know your students and your demographics better than anybody, but we can still talk about what is trending right now in COVID-19. What is the literature saying? What are people commenting, and what's going on in our professional world? When we talk about assessment, and this goes back to our course objectives and learning outcomes, not everything can be done online or by phone, right? So when we're looking at new ways of assessing, and this is really, I think, if hearing some of the comments earlier, people sound, yes, it's challenging, but we're also acknowledging that this is an opportunity. And for so long, we've had the same way of assessing students. I mean, for how long have we done papers and quizzes and had the teacher-driven classroom, where now we have this opportunity to really bring in the more student-centered, learner-centered types of assessment. So before I jump in and tell you all about what I would recommend or what is being talked about right now, I would like to know, what are you guys doing? What have you done so far? How have you changed or modified your assessments from the face-to-face situation at the beginning of the year to the emergency remote teaching to now? What are we doing with the assessments? So I'm just waiting a bit to see. You've been given guidelines for assessment. I'd like to know what those guidelines have been. What guidelines were you given? Having students give presentations. And I'm curious too to know how culturally, how we're dealing with assessment if we are having students who don't want to be on camera, who don't want to be on video, or don't want their pictures out there. How are we addressing that? Do we have any input from the live YouTube channel?
We do. We have a couple. We have a few, actually. Assignments, online class participation, guidelines are provided by the university. One person said 2 types, formative and summative. Tests, assignments, full exams, more analytical short answer and choice questions and assignments.
And what has the balance been for you guys between the formative and summative assessments?
Tests with analytical questions, assignments, and class participation.
How are we assessing the class participation? Discussion forums?
Reflective papers or reflection papers is another one.
Good.
Assessment tools have been revised to suit online. Students' attendance. Okay.
Are we grading attendance?
Okay. Another answer is it depends on the nature of the course.
Right. But again, just pick one course that you're teaching the most, because what we want to do is we want to drill down and get really specific here, right? Assessment is always an issue. How are we changing it? What are we doing? What are we grading? And something that I will be so bold as to say is that we don't want to be assessing attendance for a multitude of reasons.
%70 summative, 30% formative.
70-30, okay. 70 summative, 30% formative. Great. Thank you. Thank you to everybody who's sharing and contributing in this, because it's a sensitive topic for all of us in the university environment. So something that I do want to share is what we're seeing now. And I was speaking with some of my colleagues at Qatar University, and a lot of the literature that's out there right now too, and the recommendations that are coming in is to pull back from summative assessments and not do so much of them. What the encouragement is coming out is to do more formative assessments, having more frequent, smaller stakes assessments is proving to be more effective than having these really heavy summative assignments that are accounting for, 30 to 50% of a final grade. And there's a multitude of reasons for that, right? Because our attention span online is so much harder. And also, if we're doing formative assessments as we go, we're really able to gauge student progress on the learning path. And that gives us an opportunity to do checks, make corrections, and readjust as we go, okay? Something that, if you can even take some of your summative assessments and break them down into pieces, right? I know that at Qatar University, they were taking these major final exams or papers and saying, okay, let's break it down into some smaller writing reflections. Because at the end of the day, what are we really looking for? Okay, with this new online environment, we're encouraging a lot more self-regulation and self-paced learning, because that's just the reality of what it is to be in the online space. And something coming up too with the artifacts versus assignments. And this, I'm going to give you a quote that came from Dudley Reynolds for any of you who are in the language teaching specialty. Dudley Reynolds is a major leader in our area. And his question was, what do assessments really show anyways? Maybe this is time to start to let go of the way that things always have been done in favor of a new way, because the new context. And really, when we're talking about self-regulation and self-paced assessment, is it possible to give students a choice? Can we let them say either they want to write, let's say, a 2-paragraph journal entry, or they can do a 90-second recorded reflection? Because is the genre, unless it's a writing and composition course, the genre for communication isn't concrete, right? It's not, it doesn't have to always be essays, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't have to always be papers. We can let them make some shorter recordings, have some journal entries with the reflection, which it sounds like we're doing. With artifacts and experiences, are we looking for isolated evidence, or can we facilitate a more comprehensive experience? And this, a lot of it comes into things such as having the electronic portfolios. And at the end of this workshop, I'm going to display my email for you. And there should be an email in the link as well on YouTube, because I have a lot of information, a lot of articles that I can share with you in addition to some of my sources for this presentation. Some recommended readings that will really talk about different ways to assess learning as more of a holistic picture instead of an isolated artifact. And this, you know, it can be a touchy subject for sure, because when it comes down to online assessment, I'm certain that most of us are concerned about cheating, right? How do we counter cheating in the online space when we can't actually sit and watch our students write their paper? And the reality is that we can't. We can take some steps. So if you're asking them to do some writing, what you can do is write the questions in a way where you're asking students to explain their problem-solving process. How did they come to the answer that they're giving you? Instead of just looking for that right answer, what is the path that they took to get there? How did they apply the information that you've been covering in your lessons to bring them to the conclusion that they make? And a big part of this, as we talked about with the engagement, is seeing our students as real humans with real needs. And for any of you who maybe have your own test anxiety, for myself, standardized testing is a nightmare, right? And think about for our students, that pressure of not only dealing with a global pandemic, worrying about their family, not being able to travel to see, loved ones, because I know for myself, even in the US, it's been over a year, almost a year and a half since I got to see my own family. And that weighs on us too. So is there a way that we can facilitate engagement and assessment that is not so rigid, that is not so focused on these artifacts and these single opportunities to demonstrate learning, and instead pull it into a more comprehensive experience that the students have control over, that they're displaying, that they're showing in ways that work for them, that they do have the knowledge, and it doesn't have to be in the same way that we've always done it with multiple choice questions or what have you. Something else that is coming up a lot is moving the grading schema to pass-fail instead of letter grades. And I think most of us are familiar with Berkeley University, University of California, Berkeley. They were one of the first ones to move to that this year. And it doesn't mean that you can't also track the range to which students are achieving these outcomes, right? If they're on one outcome, if they're able to achieve 85% of it, the teachers can still track that and keep it on the records. But we can also give students the opportunity to do a pass or fail. Is it complete or incomplete? Are they satisfactory or not? And certainly places are going to be taking this 2020 pandemic into consideration for a very long time. Moving to this pass-fail grading scheme also allows students to focus more on learning and less on the letter grades, okay? And as I said, there are different words that you can choose to use. It doesn't have to be pass-fail. It can be the complete, incomplete, sufficient, not, or even credit, no credit, right? And again, I'm not giving this as a prescriptive. You should do this practice. But I'm asking you to think about this, consider this, and ask yourselves, would this be effective in our present situation? And I'll keep going. I want to make sure that we do have some time for questions. The last thing, and this does relate to the following point, which is talking about teacher burnout, right? Because we are doing so much already, navigating the technology, navigating the pandemic, that if we're really grading every single paper, every letter grade down to the half a point or to a point, is that something that we need to be doing? And this is a question for you to think and ask. Do we need to be giving these letter grades? Do we need to be really so myopic in how we're assessing our students? Or are there things that we can do, which is really hard for teachers, but can we let go of that control and put it in the hands of our students? This, again, is an opportunity for us to move along this continuum from being very teacher-driven, teacher-led, to student-centered, student-led. Let them determine, let them be in the driver's seat, and let them take on the workload that can reduce what you as a teacher are trying to constantly produce and put out and monitor. I mean, all of these things that we talked about with teacher presence, right? You're trying to make sure your students are cognitively ready for learning, that their affective filter isn't too high, that they have all the means and the mediums of expression, and that they can find all of the resources and the support, and we're emailing and we're calling. Take time for yourself too, you know, let the students take some of that. I do recommend that you avoid going live all of the time, because it just doesn't have the same effect, right? I guarantee you right now, if I were in a room with you all giving this workshop and walking around, looking at you, talking with you, answering questions, it would be a lot more personable and engaging than watching me on a screen and writing comments in the text, right? So make time for yourself, please. Make time for self-care as much as you make time for your grading, for your lesson preparation. And know that this has been a year, right? We have gone from the whole continuum of face-to-face to an emergency. This has been an emergency situation. And now that emergency is hopefully subsiding somewhat, make sure that you're taking care of yourselves and sharing the burden of the workload. All right, my friends, I so appreciate your time today. I hope that I'm enabling you to really think about how to improve your courses, ask each other what you can do to make it better. And some final thoughts is just looking ahead to the world that it is now and that will be. How can we design and deliver courses to value the whole person, students, teachers, administrators alike? Because we are more than our names on the screen and then the papers that we're writing. What valuable lessons can we learn from this experience that will benefit the future of education as a whole? Because we are the pioneers here, and we do have the opportunity to really shift the way things are going. And how can we re-envision education as less of a prescriptive, check the boxes type of formulaic program, and more of an experience that truly does help us to grow along with the complexities of the world? I'll open the floor for some questions. And while I do that, I want to make sure that you have my contact information up here. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. I would love it if you sent me an email so I can share not only my references for the materials I used for this presentation, but also I've got loads of reading recommendations for you and a roadmap that you can use to apply to the courses that you're delivering to see how effective and assess how effective you're doing so. Okay. With that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Extremely helpful. What we'll do now is we will open the floor for a few questions. We got around 20 minutes before the end of this session. And I will start by a couple of questions raised by two of our colleagues earlier in the YouTube chat box. The first question is from Dr. Muawiyah Hussein. How to deal with large number of students in the classroom, keeping in mind the principles you shared.
And can we be a little bit more specific? How do we interact with them? How do we engage?
In terms of interaction, yes.
Okay.
When you have a large number of students.
Yeah. Finding ways, something that we have done in the past that I've used. Are you all familiar with Padlet? P-A-D-L-E-T, Padlet? Because a nice thing that you can do is it's a digital corkboard. When you've got a lot of students and we're just seeing numbers and names on the page, if you can have them share, if they're open to doing pictures, having students just share their own little bio on there so that you can get to know them better, and finding ways that you can maybe, still go back to grouping them, because even though they're not in the physical classroom, you can still group them into learning cohorts within the class where they can first go to each other for more information. And so this is the facilitatory presence, right? Giving students their own forum. And this is something that's been coming up. It might make you a bit nervous, but give students a forum of communication that is only the students, where you're not there, where they can ask each other questions and answer each other's questions. And then that can reduce the amount of time that you're having to give this direct feedback, because a lot of times the students can figure it out together on their own. So provide environment for them to have the student-to-student interaction, do an online discussion forum. And in my resources list that I can share with you all, I've got a lot of great places that you can do that. Let me look at my list real quick.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andrea. The next question is from Dr. Awad, and it's more of a comment. He said the challenge with formative assessment is lack of control of grading system. Any thoughts on this?
I would respond with a question, which is why do we need to control it, right? Formative assessments are meant to be low stakes, and it's just a check. You're just checking in. So it could be something like an exit ticket, right? Google Forms. It's free, it's easy, it's drag and drop. They have exit tickets right on their site for you. At the end of a lesson, if you want to see if students are following, have them complete an exit ticket and check. But we don't, this is the push that we're having, and this might be a bit controversial because it's unfamiliar, but we don't necessarily need to control what they're doing and to control their outcomes. Let the students take ownership over it and just do small checks to make sure that they're tracking.
Okay. All right. Next question is from Dr. Ahmed. Dr. Ahmed Qahwaji. Could be cultural differences. Well, I think the question is about cultural differences and the role that cultural differences play either positively or negatively in online teaching.
Mm-hmm. Is there, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the question.
The question is related to cultural differences, and if cultural differences play any role in online teaching.
Yeah, I think culture always matters, right? And particularly with students who don't want to leave a digital footprint, who don't want to be seen, who don't want their pictures, don't want their videos. It matters. And this is where your opportunity comes to be really creative and find different ways of having students participate. And something else, you know, we can do voice recordings if it's about being seen. But there is a global shift right now that's going to necessitate everybody getting out of their comfort zones. And I'm not one to tell you what's the best for the culture in which you work. That's something that you'll have to decide.
Thank you. Next question from Dr. Ahmed Mukhtar. Andrea, in your opinion, what is the most or the best way to motivate students to participate online?
I'm thinking I have a couple of things. If you're doing a live session, this might not be really ideal, but wait time, the awkward silence where things aren't moving unless somebody does participate and people are squirming a little bit, that can be a push. But also, I think you've really got to tap into students' individual creativity, okay? Because how many times have you had a student in class? I have had, and I remember this one student, and she was wonderful. And during the class, I thought she was never paying attention. And she was always just doodling and doodling and doodling. But for her, she was listening and taking everything in, and the drawing aspect of it was a way to keep her hand busy and to still engage, but in a different way. And so with increasing the students' engagement, let them, putting the learning and the responsibility in their hands, let them choose how they want to engage and how they want to express themselves. Again, using digital corkboards like Padlet, or having them create something that they're posting to share in a place that their classmates, their peers, can review and give them feedback. I mean, this is, nothing makes us engage more than like, wow, somebody's watching, somebody's going to see this. The easiest way to disengage is if you can disappear, right? So finding different ways to appeal to their different preferences for expression.
Good. Thank you. We'll take two more questions, and the next one is from Dr. Khadr. What is the best way to conduct practical classes like physics labs?
Ooh, I have no background in physics, but let me think. You know, some of the reading that I did see talked about having students. So if we're doing a physics, like, are we doing experiments in the classroom? Is it something that we want to see the students do on their end? Or is it something that we can listen to them describe, or something that we can read as they write out a process explaining it? Again, this is really pushing us to have to find different mediums of engagement. And so if you can get students, the number one thing at the end of the day is having students produce, having them produce the content. And it doesn't have to always be the same way things have always been done. There are so many ways right now. You can do things, you know, you can do pictures, you can do Powtoons, you can do Flipgrid or Screencast-O-Matic. You can have students that make a recording that is, you know, let them know it's locked down, only the teacher is going to see this, and demonstrate the lab, the physics lab, whatever the experiment may be that they're doing, have them demonstrate how they're doing it, and assure them that it's not something anybody else is going to see. Or you can use, has anybody here used Canva? C-A-N-V-A, Canva is my all-time favorite tool within the last 6 months. I go to Canva for everything. And you can find ways to have students create artifacts or demonstrations of learning that we can put together in a more comprehensive experiential display. It's really thinking outside the box, and I'm not sure with physics exactly how you can do that, but I guarantee that, look at Khan Academy, see what they've got out there.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, that's very helpful. Our last question is from one of our partners with Sally Kuhn for Knowledge Company, Iman Al-Maskari. Iman is asking, can we give the students the choice to pick their assignments?
Why not? Now, let me put a caveat on that, okay? Because I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. I wanna come in here and talk with you guys. You think of it like a menu, okay? So as I mentioned earlier, you can give, so if you have an outcome that students need to be able to demonstrate mastery of, or a degree to which they're mastering it, you can let them choose how they show that mastery, okay? And so for assignments, let's say if you're in a literature class, maybe you can give students a menu of options that they can choose to read, that they can choose to analyze, that they can read, analyze, and comment on, reflect on, and apply to themselves. So we certainly don't want to give 100% free reign over any of the assignments, because then we're not guaranteeing learning, right? And every course has an objective. We have something that we're trying to teach. So you choose what you're trying to teach, what they need to learn to be able to demonstrate knowledge, but you can let them choose the format in which they show it, whether it be in writing, whether it be in a recording, whether it be in a video or audio, or in images on a corkboard or something, right? There's so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrea. I just cannot thank you enough. I know it's too early for you. It's 5 a.m. and
not too early for my friends in DHOFAR. I'm so happy. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
I bet, you bet. Thank
There's
you.
A lot.
And thanks to, I wanna take this opportunity to thank those who made this event possible. The team of CTL. Thank you very much, my dear colleagues. Special thanks to our partners in Salikun for Knowledge. Mustafa, thank you very much. Your support in translating this session is highly, highly appreciated. Making sure that this knowledge is shared with those who prefer Arabic. So thank you. Shukran ya Mustafa, Jazakallah khair. Many thanks to Iman al-Maskari. Iman, thank you for being so understanding and accommodating. And I appreciate all of this. Thanks, my dear colleagues at DHOFAR University, from all the colleges and programs. This has been fun, and we look forward to more sessions like this in the near future. The next session is going to be on Wednesday on teaching students with disabilities online, challenges and opportunities. I encourage all of you to please, the team just sent through the YouTube public chat, they sent the feedback forms, both in Arabic and in English. And so please go ahead and fill those out, and you should be able to receive your attendance certificate immediately via email. Andrea, we look forward to welcoming you in person again at DHOFAR University one day.
Shukran.
Hopefully soon.
I hope so. I hope so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
It's always an honor working with you, my friend.
You too, my friend. Thank you so much. And I hope that everybody has had some benefit from this, and please feel free to reach out and connect and continue the conversation in email.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless. Enjoy the rest of the day. Have a wonderful day, Andrea, and the rest of the group.
You too.
Thank you very much, everybody.